Check. Oh, okay, there we go. All right, we're back live on this assignment. Didn't finish reading the other day, and yesterday was actually Coach's birthday, so I had the option after working out to come back and finish out this article, but I elected to go over to his house and hang out for a bit. It was a good choice. It was a good choice. And now I have to come back and finish this up. So, let's see, I don't remember what page I was on before, but we're going to continue reading through this, collecting through as we go. It's been a good article so far. Second to last one. So by this week, I should be done with this assignment. This is a big line already right here. We're talking about discipleship and what ministry looks like in the context of the social media world. And what we've noticed, I think, over these last handful of years, that a lot of people who generate a following and influence in the spiritual spaces in regard to social media, very performative. I was watching a video the other day. I forget what the channel was on YouTube, but he was commenting on Michael Todd and some of his antics, so to speak. Like, I don't know, this dude be wearing some of the most ridiculous stuff up on stage, and some of his illustrations probably take it a little bit too far, where it's almost strictly on the side of entertainment as opposed to educational. And it's not that he doesn't have decent points or good things to say, but what are you bringing the focus to? When people, I don't remember the YouTube channel. I don't remember um, um, I don't remember much about the sermon or the point of the sermon, but I remember the illustration. I remember what he was doing essentially to get the attention. So it was impactful in that regard. But in terms of how that fit into the larger message and what he was actually trying to say about God, I'm not sure, because at least with that particular illustration, it was more about what he was doing. So definitely have where people are trying to one up each other, even in the spiritual space or the religion space, to try to draw more viewers. And it follows exactly what we see with social media on many accounts. People feel like they have to do more, the next crazy thing. I'll get in later, Scotty. I got to finish this article and maybe start on my next one. It's my second to last one. So I'll get there, though. I'll get there. But yeah, it's interesting because it's a people thing where people are going into the space looking to um, just one up. And when it comes to the actual message, it gets lost because people are trying so hard to stand out with the wild and the sensational as opposed to the message. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have any illustrations or creative ways of presenting the gospel or spiritual truth. But I am saying we have to look out for it and be sure to not get caught doing too much for the sake of attention and losing the focus of just sharing the gospel. Yeah. I think something else interesting to consider with this. Um, think of discipleship in this concept we've been going back to over these last few weeks, and obviously the point of the class. If discipleship is supposed to be based on somebody teaching someone to teach the next one, it can't just be sensational and me just trying to get the attention for the sake of getting more eyes on me. On one hand, from the lens of spirituality, that already sounds ridiculous because if I'm trying to get the eyes on me, obviously I'm not trying to get the eyes on Jesus. But the other part of that is it would be different if I was teaching people how to create illustrations that are catchy, but also focus on pointing people back to Jesus. And I think we see that like to a T when we again go to Jesus and look at the way that he interacted with people, look at the stories that he told, look at the illustrations that he made, very deep, very impactful that people could relate to. And yet it was never about more eyes on me. He was always directing people to God. If we take, and this is, I think, what I'm getting at here, if we take that as a model and we realize it isn't about pointing it back to me, now we've opened it up that many people can come out and say, hey, here's the story, and it points to Jesus and it points to God. All of a sudden, it's not like a monopoly on who's the most charismatic, who who has the biggest following or whatever, because we can all, I think it said something about that in this article too. Like wherever we are, we have people that we're connected to. Each and every single one of us has an audience or a community, a circle that we're in that we can have influence in. So it becomes less about let me be so over the top and dramatic, so I'm bringing people to me. Now it's that part doesn't matter. I'm relating to people because of the relationships I have with the people in my circle. I'm relating to them in the best way I know how because of my experience and relationship with them, pointing them to Jesus and not back to myself. So it's beautiful because in the context of Ephesians 4:12, that's this verse, Ephesians 4 that we're talking about here. This is where and he gave some teachers and he gave some apostles and he gave some this, he gave some that. There's different roles and specialties for a bunch of different people. So the expectation is not that we should all be the same thing and necessarily at the same level of expression. Some people who are extroverts, I go back to that one often because I'm an introvert. Some people who are extroverted will naturally gravitate towards other ones and will still have to have the challenge of reflecting people towards Jesus. And for introverts, introverts will naturally gravitate towards other ways of sharing and communicating and building relationships with people. But the challenge is still there to not focus it on something else or even internally, but to bring it back to Jesus. That's where it is. And then showing people how within the context of those relationships to go and do the same thing. Hey, I'll add you tonight. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. there's so many good illustrations in the Bible about this, like preparing, perfecting, equipping. You're talking about building a collective set of things that help you get somewhere. It's the body of Christ is the illustration. That again, great illustration that people could relate to, but focused back to Christ. And there it is right there. I actually skipped over that. Didn't see that. The body of Christ may be built. The hand has its purpose. The foot has its function. The heart does its thing. The lungs do their part. The mind does its part. The eyes and so on. You get what I'm saying? Something that's really important to me to emphasize from this is the level playing field to where anybody can come in and be a part. Again, some people will have skills that naturally gravitate them in a certain way, but if you have people who are trying to use, and there's a lot of people out there like this, who try to use spirituality and people's need for religion and for a connection to a higher being, they use that as a means to amass a following, right? And they kind of hold it over other people. So now the things that I'm doing, well, if these things aren't happening for you, then you must not be as good of a Christian. So you have people who don't have that skill set and don't have that ability and may not even have that desire, who are getting tricked into thinking because they don't have those same things the way that this other big person does, that they're less than. And they never get to see that there's a place for them within the larger picture and within the body of Christ, to where they may not be the hand, but they might be the foot, so to speak. And of course, this is within the context of discipleship, which if the leader or the person is trying to direct people to be more like them, you think of prosperity gospel, it's a pretty dangerous place where this happens, right? Because it becomes very easy for people to sucker people into saying, "Hey, you give me more money, and things will get better for you." Just listen to the breakdown of that. They're trying to set people up into this warped sense of discipleship. Like, I'm gonna get you to give me the money, and then you're going to get the money. So yeah, they are trying to pass on some kind of a skill or whatever, but it's very selfish and self-centered. And even within that, prosperity gospel doesn't say anything about the mission and telling other people about Jesus. But it tends to come back and be very self-centered again. So these are the kinds of things that we have to look out for, because Jesus came to fishermen and taught them how to be fishers of men, who would teach others in the next generation, the next ones down, to be fishers of men also. That was the gospel commission. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing, creating disciples, those who have the goods, and they go out and share the goods and show other people how to continue sharing the goods. So it's about a giving thing, a multiplication, as opposed to me adding upon myself and keep bringing people back to me. See, this word happening here, katartismon, that's from this Greek here, katartizo. Jesus used this word to mean the disciple that is perfect shall be as his master. So again, think about it in the context of these people who are trying to gain the attention using spirituality as the means to do it. It could be somebody. I brought up Michael Todd earlier. I think Prosperity Gospel, Joel Osteen is another one of these guys. Um, for the influence and the power that they have, do you think that they would be okay with somebody else branching off, amassing the same skill and the same wealth, and losing followers to that next person based on what you've seen or what you know from them? Is that their pattern to teach other people to be just as equal as them? Or is it to keep people in a certain position to where they're beneath and they're coming back to me more so than looking to Jesus? That's the thing we have to think about. That pride is a factor. But this is what Jesus is saying. There's a parable. I don't know if this article will get into it, but there's a parable that talks about one sows and another one reaps. In other words, different functions towards the same goal, and no one is elevated above the other one. There's equality there, even though people are doing different things. That's what discipleship is all about. Someone may be gifted in planting the seed. Somebody may be gifted in reaping the seed and leading people to make decisions based on that seed that was planted by somebody else. But it doesn't mean that the person who reaped the seed was better than the person who planted the seed. And both of them within their roles as a part of the overall discipleship process can reflect Jesus perfectly. Because it isn't about me being so great at planting the seed. And it's not about me being so great at reaping the seed. It's about let me do this thing that God has given me the inclination for or the skills or the abilities for to the best that I can for him. And I teach other people not necessarily to do the exact same thing as me, but to use their talents and their abilities to the best of their abilities for God also. This is the work that Jesus wants to do in us, to repair, to restore, and to prepare us for a specific purpose. That's what it is. The main thing is the main thing, but each of us contribute differently towards that. Equipping believers can be understood as the primary goal in the ministry of making disciples. That's that's the key. I mean, based on what we're saying here, obviously that's the key. I need to set people up to go do things that are not dependent on me because it's not about me. If the system that I promote and if the way that I'm teaching is dependent on me, I'm not doing it right. This is what makes mission so challenging, right? Because you go into places and you want to do so much, but you have to set those places up that you go into. You have to set them up to be able to sustain whatever it is that you're doing there for when you leave, because you won't be there to keep things going. So it's interesting, right? It's it's tough to think that I may have, let's say, 100% of ability, but going into a certain place because of their infrastructure and because of what they can do to sustain something on the back end, I might only be able to go and give 40%. And I might think of it as, oh well, I'm downing myself and I'm not doing the best that I can. But the best that you can is to do that 40% because that's the thing that can be replicated. That's the thing that can be sustained. And if I give 100%, now it's about me saying, I want to give what I want to give no matter what. And then when I leave, nothing that I nothing that I've worked towards can be replicated. So I've done more harm than good. Interesting. Take some notes here. Been talking this whole time and haven't taken a note yet. How do I flip this? Oh, there you go. Nice. Learn something new every day. Make this bigger. I'll leave this bigger because it's too hard to see the text. Enough for me to read, but got to consider being big enough for y'all to read as well. Oh, nope, nope, nope. Yep. Okay, continuing on. Boom. That's what we're talking about. All types of ministry are important. The officers or the people in charge are not to lord it over the flock, but are to consider themselves as servants. This is the key. Spiritual gifts are given to help each believer find their place. That's what we're talking about. Person has their role in a place where they specialize. It's not all the same for everybody. The overarching goal is the same, but the function of each individual part is different based on the skill sets and the passions that the individual has. But it is, again, reaching towards the same goal. This article talked about social media and how it impacts something like this. And social media in particular, we see it with places like, I would say Instagram. I tend to use that more than some of these other platforms, maybe TikTok as well. I'm not sure as much there. But there is this culture of this is what I'm doing. And if your experience doesn't mirror what I'm doing, then you suck. And what that does is it forces people into this never ending chase of trying to pursue something that they don't really have an interest in, that they aren't really equipped to do. But because of the societal pressure, they feel like this is the only way to bring meaning to their life. And it ends up in the pursuit of somebody else. The obvious problem is that in that pursuit, people never end up finding their true authentic self and the way that they would contribute best towards the ministry and the mission of God. So because you end up losing that time, again, it's a double-edged sword. You may end up you're gonna do harm to yourself because you're not in alignment with where you should be as a person. But depending on how you exercise or reflect whatever it is you think you're supposed to be doing, you could be doing harm to others as well. Maybe they don't understand it because I didn't communicate it right or something like that. And so I'm sharing a message that isn't actually what I want to share, but it's coming across that way because I don't have the skill set. Yeah, that's true. It's a good point. I remember it was always, all right, here's the evangelism push. And we plan for this 3 week or this 4 week long. This is the evangelism that we're going to do in the community. Sure, you do it, you have a good response. and then you leave. But man, what would it look like to kind of space that out? And instead of doing 4 straight weeks, 5 nights a week, what if you did 2 nights a week, spread out over 12 weeks or over the course of a quarter? Probably look a little bit different, and you might find some things to be a little bit more sustainable in terms of the response from the community to that. If it's supposed to be who we are, it shouldn't be just bunched up into this big one-time event, and then after it's done, we move on to the next thing. The point is that within real Christianity and the real following of Christ, there isn't a next thing. That's part of it. Earlier in this article was talking about how there is no optional mission aspect to being a follower of Christ because of the gospel commission. That is the very thing that Jesus told us, the last words that he gave before he left the earth. It's not optional. When we sign up for this, that's what we're signing up for, is to be someone who's always seeking to disciple, always seeking to evangelize, always seeking to share the gospel, always seeking to live a life that reflects these things, even if we aren't expressly saying these things to other people. Yep. Small groups, fellowship, that's where it takes place. I need to write that down. I was talking with my buddy, Donnie, about this. Um, he, for the most part, has hosted the home church that I'm a part of. And we were talking about, well, what does it look like to empower people who come to start their own groups? That's discipleship. One of the comments that he said very specifically was that have people who come in and they see that this thing is growing, that more people are interested, and they come in thinking, "Oh, we got to scale this thing. We got to make this thing bigger." But no, small groups and fellowship is where the magic happens. So the idea is to grow not by increasing the size of one group, but to increase the number of groups, the number of small groups that are there. And how does this help? I come back to being an introvert. In a group of 10 people, I'm much more likely to speak up. In a group of 50 people, I might just keep to myself. So you balance it out, right? Because by having more groups, you're creating more opportunities for more people to connect with the text. And that's the entire point. That's the discipleship. And then within these other small groups, you're giving more opportunities for the leaders to come out and continue to do the same thing. So by keeping things small, you continue to encourage fellowship on more than just a superficial level. And people are able to find their place and their role within that smaller group. And they feel like their contribution and what they have to say is more important because there are fewer people there. Whereas again, like I said, you have a larger group, the majority of people will stay silent and it's dominated by the voices of a few. That isn't what Jesus intended for with his disciples. The importance of small groups and fellowship. Oikos. There's a yogurt named after this. Does it say what this word meant in here? Did I miss it? Let me look this up because I'm curious now. Oikos. Household. Look at that. I don't know why the yogurt is called household. Interesting. This represents the basic social, economic, and political unit in ancient Greek society. don't know why this thing auto shuts down. I guess my voice doesn't count as audio coming through. Whatever. Okay. But that's what it is. Household. Right. And that's where the expansion is, right? Because you reach out to someone and then that person's connected to their own circle. So in you reaching that one and developing that relationship, they already have relationships with these other people. So you equip them to do the same thing with their family. And everyone in their family has their own relationships and connections. They're equipped to do the same thing with others. That's how you get exponential growth with something. It can't just be based on one person because when that one person dies, that movement dies with them. Think about it. This is such a powerful concept because you look at Jesus and how many places did he go to where hundreds of thousands of people followed him wherever he went, right? If Jesus engaged in his ministry the same way some of these people today do, it would have been all about him, which is odd to say because I mean, Jesus is the only person that it could be all about. But um it seems odd to say that about Jesus because he is the only one that it could be all about. But even he understood. Again, it's that I could give 100%, but because these people won't be able to make the most of it or maximize what I can give them, I'm gonna hold back a little bit. And even Jesus spends most of his time within that those amazing crowds following him, directing them to God. It's pretty incredible, actually. So Jesus knows that he's not going to be with the disciples indefinitely. He was only with them in ministry for 3.5 years. So he's doing the discipleship by saying, hey, here's the thing I'm doing. I want you to come and learn how to do this too. Because he knows that when he leaves, they're going to have to continue doing that. Is it more than 3 years of learning and sharing? That's what they did. And he challenges them to undertake the greater work by doing the same thing that he did. If Jesus was selfish and prideful and just made people focus on him and never passed off any of the reins, so to speak, to the disciples, when he left, the movement would have died. That's what I'm trying to say. But because he taught the disciples to be fishers of men, because they came and apprenticed with him and learned his ways of reaching people, they were able to continue that. And they were able to replicate that so that when the disciples died, there's all kinds of different stories, crazy stories about out there about how the disciples died. They did the discipleship thing right because when they died, the movement didn't die with them. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. It isn't enough, and I think especially obviously for me, 5 years as a student missionary and different programs, different things I try to do over the course of the years. Early on, it was very much let me do this thing and try to leave my mark because this is my thing and this is what I want to do. But later on, maybe my third or fourth year in, my mindset started changing. Like once I started thinking about the fact that I was going, it wasn't about let me see how big of a legacy I can leave. That's always a part. But the next big thought that really came to my mind was how can I how can I leave something here that's going to outlast me here? Because when I go, I don't know if I'll come back, when I will get to come back. I won't be the next one to continue the work. So I have to empower people who are here or who will be here to keep the work going along without me. Praise God, I think to a degree I was able to do that. But it's like that's the point. It isn't about me seeing myself as so important and valuable to this thing that I'm unwilling to put some power and some ability and empowerment of other individuals. I can't keep that to myself. That isn't true mission. True mission is about empowering other people to do the same thing in their own way. That's what it's about. 'Cause this is it. It's this simple. The goal is to make disciples, regardless of where they come from or what they're doing. They don't have to look like me. They don't have to sound like me. They don't have to have the same culture or understanding that I do. But once they learn it, can they use the skills that they have? Can they use the gifts that God has given them to reach people and invite people in their own way to follow Jesus and can and to keep multiplying the process? A lot that could be said about this one. You look at Christianity and you look at the number of denominations out there, and you could say that there's a lot of dissension. You look within each denomination of itself. I was talking with a coworker who happens to be from a Catholic background, and she was acknowledging the same thing, that the differences and the dissension that I see within Adventism and all the different churches, in, even in the same communities, she sees the same thing in Catholicism. There's so many things that separate people, and we're not looking for the things that bring people together. And when we start focusing on those differences, it's inevitable that we would be split. Whereas if we started looking beyond self and to God, God is the one thing that unites us all. So if we can connect on that level, how could it change the way that we relate to other people? If I go into a conversation realizing that as a child of God, I have not just something in common with someone else. I have the most important thing in common with someone else. How does that inform the way I go into that conversation, in that discussion? Even if that person looks different than me, sounds different from me, is from a different place than me. That's a game changer. But a lot of us don't come into spaces with that mentality. Pictures of men, we talked about that. Yep. This is what we said before. It's not just about people with all the supposed skill and charisma and ability that have a responsibility, but everybody who claims to be a part of this has the power and the ability in their own way to reach people. Perpetual multiplying. That's what it is. I, as a singular individual, am only going to engage with a very small number of people in the grand scheme of things, right? But they say each one reach one. So if I reach one person who reaches another person, and that person reaches another one, and it's like you can kind of see the bloom in your mind, right? If I spend time reaching one, and then once that one is equipped to reach somebody else, I reach somebody else, and then in that same time frame, we go and reach someone else, and it continues to expand and expand and expand. And how many people have grown, and how far has the mission grown, and how many people have been reached, even though I'm only doing what I can where I can. If I try to monopolize the mission, that never happens. If it's all about me, then I get burned out, because now all the people that I'm talking to, instead of feeling equipped to go and replicate the process with someone else, they're bringing them all back to me. And I'm not going to have time for that. So I would end up doing a disservice to the work on the one hand, because I can't give everything I have to invest in these people, or it's going to be very surface level, and cheap because I'm trying too hard to connect to everybody. Either way is not good, obviously. Perpetual multiplying. Yep. Imperfect human beings empowered by spiritual gifts reach out to other imperfect human beings and minister to them, and this process continues over and over and over again. So even this thing right here, the Christian denominations in North America have lost one third of their membership. If you think about what we talked about so far, it makes sense. If the smallest unit, the oikos, that household unit, is no longer the launch pad for new relationships, new connections, new the multiplication of disciples, what would we expect to happen? In other words, the model is based on like a singular level of sharing and mission and ministry. So it's bound to die within that one generation. On every level, it should be that these people and the next generations are equipped to do the same thing that was done for them, not just to receive what's done for them and get to this level of intellectual assent. I'm here, okay, cool. It would be like, um, I could use basketball as an example. There's a lot of high level basketball players who have basketball camps, right? And a lot of these players who go to the basketball camps of these high level basketball players end up in the NBA eventually. That's that's the model. It isn't just that I become influential or great, so to speak, in that space. No, I turn around and I give back and I show people how to do the same thing. And I show people how to do the same thing, not just for their own growth, but also how to do the sharing part for others as well. So it's both. So now when these people grow up and they get to the next level, they feel the same responsibility to say, okay, I made it here because of what someone else did for me and the opportunity that they gave. Now I'm here. Let me give the opportunity to someone else and teach them to give it to the next generation. That's how it multiplies. Research has shown that the people most likely to leave the church are recent converts and converts from public evangelism. Why? Because if it's done in mass, there's only surface level connection. There's no relationship there. I'm looking for people to agree to an intellectual level of this is what is right. Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. And that's it. There's no relationship. We cannot get the two things confused. Just because somebody agrees with what I think because of something they heard me say over the course of 1 hour a night over the course of a month doesn't mean that we have a relationship. It just means that I was good at expressing something in a way that they could understand. So going back to what I said earlier, when the evangelism model is, hey, let's get this 4 weeks and and it isn't spaced out. Not only am I giving very little overall, but there's also not enough time there to develop genuine relationship with the people. There's not the space for those relationships to grow because the evangelism was short and so compact. So what outcome what else would I expect? There's no time for actually living with people because we're too busy trying to put on this program and this event. I forget the book that I was reading, but it talked about the difference between focusing on programs and focusing on people. When you focus on programs, you can spend 8 months to plan the program, and you can put the program on, and then when it's done, you get to planning the next one. But when you focus on the people, you realize you may not have to plan as much. You just have to be more present. And then in the way that you organize the program, it's still centered around people. So they remain the focus. But now it doesn't matter how fast you do it because it's not about, hey, we got to get this done in this month. We got 28 days. Now it's how do we benefit the people? How do we live with them? How do we become a part of their experience? How do we allow them to be a part of our experience? Right? The foundational problem is superficial discipleship practices, not faulty discipleship, because it isn't even really what discipleship is supposed to be. Quantitative goals, you start focusing on that, you lose. You lose. I think about it from the context of the business world, the company where I work. Now we we have goals that we want to meet for sure, but the bigger emphasis is on the relationships that we have with the client. So it means that we may put more time and effort and energy into these one-on-one conversations with the client. It means that from a support standpoint, we answer phones and we are the ones in the live chat. There's not bots. And I can't tell you how many times I had an issue with like let's say a phone service. Is that what they call it? I don't remember off the top of my head what you call these things. Phone service, whatever. And you want to call in to ask a question, a very simple question that will not take a long time, but you end up getting the automated machine. It tells you what button to hit, and then it sends you through this automated system again. And you're talking to this stupid robot that doesn't know anything because people think that's going to be more efficient. That's superficial discipleship practices. And it makes people hate the fact that they are signed up for this phone service or for this company because they can't get the help that they need. There's no actual connection there. They're looking at it from an efficiency standpoint. They're focusing on the quantitative aspect when the problem is clearly you're not connecting with people anymore. Man, I hate going into and they market it this way too, which I think is the stupidest thing ever. This is live chat. That's not live chat. I'm talking with a robot that doesn't know anything. I have literally been like on a couple occasions. There was one time where I got charged. It was something like the phone upgrade, and I mailed it back, and they're trying to charge me the money, like $1,500 for the thing that I sent back, and trying to tell me I didn't send it, and I have the um the proof that I sent it back and that it was delivered. They're trying to charge me for it. The hours, the hours that I spent trying to get a hold of a real person to talk to get this thing figured out was ridiculous over the span of multiple days. Absolutely ridiculous. I, I was so frustrated. I was so upset. And I was like, I'm done with this. When I finally got a hold of someone, not only did they reverse it and give me credit for it because I had the proof that the phone was delivered, they also gave me a credit moving forward and a couple other benefits as well. They bumped up my service level without bumping up the cost, blah, 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 blah. That's what a real person can do. That was not superficial. That was a tangible benefit that I received that guess what? Made me willing to give that phone company another chance and made me feel a little bit better about being associated with them. Think about it when it comes to church and ministry and mission. It's the same thing. Do we have this superficial approach where people are trying to get answers to something simple, but they feel like they're getting the runaround? They're not learning anything. Does it feel like when we're trying to do mission with them, we're giving them the basics? We're not going deep. We come in, we hit them really hard with a 4 week, 2 week evangelism series or whatever, and we roll out and we think we accomplished something. And then when these people have questions, they can't get through. They're already supposed to be at that level of intellectual ascent. They're already supposed to know what else is there to answer. How many frustrated people are there in our midst that we don't even know about because they're out here talking to bots in the live chat? And how many people might be willing to give church another shot if they had a relationship with a person from within there and were able to have a conversation and see, oh, okay, thank you for the help, and and this is why I'll give this another chance. How many people might be in that situation? How many of you might be in that situation? Yep. Often, Adventists have been more concerned with attracting new members and not enough attention being paid to holding those baby Christians. This is even a crazy example, right? The baby Christian. From the time of inception, I forget what the actual word is, but from the time of inception to birth, you have 9 months. Okay. 9 months is not a short amount of time. But let me ask you this: is the job done once the baby is born? Told Nicodemus, you must be born again. Is the job done when the baby is born? The answer is yes. Well, then you've accomplished the mission, done your part, and as soon as the baby is born, you're good. You can leave. You don't have to worry about it anymore. If the answer is no, then we seriously need to reevaluate what we're doing. The job's just getting started when the baby is born. How many years? How much more effort? How much more energy do you need to put into that baby for it to be successful and for it to grow up and for it to have a shot at life? Parents, I'm not on that level yet, so I don't know it as well as some of you know. But what is that 9 months compared to how many years you invest on the back end? A lot of times, those first 9 months, if everything goes well, turns into the next 18 years. It can't just be about making new babies. You got to take care of the babies and give them a chance to grow up well too. Hey, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Coaching. Yeah, that's a good one. I'm actually working on some life coaching right now. I have to do a couple sessions to get my certification, but that's the goal right now. That's the target. I got to touch up on my skills and make this thing happen. But coaching, the way that we describe it in life coaching, is essentially helping people find the best version of themselves. It isn't just like showing people how to do something, but it's showing someone how to use the tools that they have at their own disposal to accomplish their goal. That's true coaching. Anybody can tell somebody what to do, and the person who has a natural ability can be successful at that. But when you start teaching someone how to use their abilities to do that next thing and to start figuring things out on their own, that's when you've hit another level of education. That's what true coaching is about. The whole section here is about life coaching. These are the things we talk about. All right. And I'll close out with this one here. This is what it comes down to. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you. Such a simple, beautiful line from Jesus to his followers. But that's what it is. You have to take a good look at how Jesus was sent, what he did, how he engaged with people around him, how he spent time with people and spent more time with people living with them than he did in preaching to them. Don't forget, 33, 30 when he started his ministry, 33 when he was crucified. How many of those years were spent in mission? Half. The rest of that was spent in living with people. Worrying about that aspect first. The mission came later. And that's how he's sending us. So the life aspect has to be considered. That's where the real transformative power is. And we end up using those relationships. We end up leveraging those relationships for the benefit of the other people. They can gain something that they can take with them and replicate. It's not surface level. It isn't something that's done in a very short amount of time. It's something that takes a long time. But because of that, the buy-in is deeper. We'll invest more. And over a longer period of time, they get more chance to see exactly what it is that they're contributing to. That's what it is. As the Father sent me, I'm sending you. And we all have our parts to play with the different skill sets and things that God has given us interest in. So I'll leave you with that. And that's the end of this article. One more. One more. And I finished the pre intensive assignment that was due a month and a half ago. 2 months ago, actually. All right. See you later.